It has now more targets it would have to deal with. Article of the New York Times, when Pbbm approved those four more...
Galit na galit ang international relation expert na si Ms. Rogando sa Sass sa kanyang naging livestream sa usaping EDCA. Dito nga ay sinabi niya na maaari nang maging target ang Pilipinas ng bansang China. Kamakailan kasi ay sinabi niya na tila ay nabudol siya ni President Bongbong Marcos pagdating sa foreign policy. #never again, ikaw na nagsabi noon, if the Americans come in it is bound to fail. At least hindi si Lenny ang nag-approve ng additional 4 EDCA sites.
In the 2022 presidential elections, I was known as an ardent supporter of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Just like in 2016, when I supported President Rodrigo Duterte, the primary reason why I supported President Marcos Jr. is his foreign policy. However, I do not support the recent foreign policy maneuver of President Marcos Jr. This is a complete reversal of what he promised during the 2022 presidential one-on-one interview with Boy Abunda on January 25, 2022. Mr. Abunda asked him if he would invite the United States to get involved and help us in our dispute with China. President Marcos Jr. categorically said, no. The problem is between China and us. If the Americans come in, it is bound to fail. Let me repeat that. I didn't invent this. He said this. No. The problem is between China and us. If the Americans come in, it is bound to fail. On February 2, 2023, the Philippines and the United States entered into agreement to expand U.S. access to military bases in our country under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA, which was concluded in 2014 under President Benigno Aquino Jr. Under Aquino's EDCA, the U.S. military was given access to 5 EDCA facilities. Now, under Marcos Jr., the U.S. military was given access to 4 more. Aquino Marcos, the irony of history. The article of the New York Times is so brutally honest. Quote, in any war, operational and supply bases would be among the first targets an enemy would try to strike. End quote. Now, Jacob Stokes, a senior fellow in the Indo-Pacific Security Program at the Center for a New American Society and an advisor to Mr. Biden when he was vice president, was quoted in this New York Times article. Okay? He explained this targeting
supply and hearing.
No, that the Philippines will be used as a targeting
Yes, it is.
area. Ito ito mismong sinabi niya ha, quote, if China is going to try to take steps with its missile arsenal to take out locations where the U.S. projects forces, it now has more targets. It has now more targets it would have to deal with. End quote. This is the article of the New York Times. When Pbbm approved those 4 more bases.
Yeah, yeah. Mm,
Hindi sa akin to. Sa mga Amerikano to.
mm.
Hindi rito sa mga makakaliwa.
No?
Former advisor ni Biden. Oh, dahil marami ng target ang China.
Mm.
So crudely speaking, we are another target for China in order to exhaust its missile arsenal.
Mm.
Ano pa bang logical conclusion dun? So, can President Marcos Jr. tell us how many of us will die?
Yeah.
Okay? How our economy would look like
Mm.
after the dust settled.
Mm.
Okay? How are we going to rebuild this republic? Aren't we supposed to be having a public debate whether this is a future we want to have for our country?
Yes. Supposedly.
Does President Marcos Jr. have the guts to stand up to the United States of America and say, no, I will not allow the Philippines to be used in your war?
Yeah.
Shouldn't the Congress
Yeah.
be intervening about this now?
Yes.
Now, let me end by highlighting the following numbers. 2025, 2026, 2027, within 10 years. These are the supposed estimated timeframes China would decide to change the status quo by gaining full control of Taiwan. This is according to the United States. These are also the timeframes. Remember this. These are also the timeframes when the United States could still win against China,
Yeah.
though with heavy losses.
Yeah.
Okay? Longer than this, the higher the cost.
Yes.
And the less certain is the victory of the United States against China.
Yeah.
So anong ibig sabihin nito? Anong ibig sabihin ng mga numerong ito? Okay? So what does this remind you? Doesn't this evoke you of the moment when US President George W. Bush tried to convince Americans to gain domestic support for a preventive war against Iraq in 2003? Let me remind you of what George W. Bush Jr. said during that time. Quote, facing clear evidence of peril, we cannot wait for the final proof, the smoking gun that could come in the form of a mushroom cloud. End quote. Hindi na raw siya maghihintay ng final proof. Invade na. War na against Iraq. And what do you call that? That's what you call a preventive war. And the United States has not abandoned its preventive war doctrine that George W. Bush Jr. instituted. Yes. So the question is the United States already convinced, okay, that it is facing a clear evidence of peril that China will gain full control of Taiwan by military force? Is the United States still waiting for a final proof that China will really do it? May history prove me wrong that US and China will go to war in the time frame US personalities provided. Mamili na lang kayo dyan, 25, 26, 27. Or but within 10 years, ano ba ngayon? 33.
Oh,
Yun ang pinaka-liberal. 33.
Matagal na yun.
Okay? May history prove me wrong that we will be another battleground in a war that is not of our own making. May history prove me wrong that we are once again trapped in the US web of either you are with them or against them. Tinatanong, alam mo yung nagsimula ako ng post ito, sinasabi sa akin, sino pipiliin mo, China or US? Hindi kailangan natin piliin ng US. This is American propaganda at work at you.
Yes. Yes.
The choice is not between China or the United States, but between being a pawn
Yeah.
and being a sovereign.
State. Yeah. Absolutely.
In the Spanish-American War, did we have a choice? In the US-Japan War, did we have a choice? Hindi, syempre, colony tayo nun eh. Colony pa ba tayo ng United States para hindi tayo mamili na, oy, kayo na lang magpatayan. You know, heroes are often those who emerge triumphant after a tragedy. But the greater hero is the one who prevented a tragedy from happening in the first place. So, Mr. President, be that hero for our country.